Everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm so happy to welcome Kaelin Peterson back with us because she's a friend to NMSN. I think you'll remember her from our last Military Spouse Summit where she was talking a little bit more about what it is she does. And if you missed it, I hope you'll go back and check the link. And you know what? I think we will just post the link in addition to this highlight because that was a really good session. So Kaylin works in higher education as a lead evaluator, and she's been able to maintain her career with the same organization through multiple moves. So we're looking forward to learning more about this during our conversation because I think you're a unicorn. So happy you could join us.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm thrilled to be talking to you again. So can you tell us, for those people who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do as a lead evaluator and give us a little bit insight into your career path?
Sure. So as a lead evaluator, I am a faculty member at a university. We work in a disaggregated model. So a little different in that I am faculty, but I had absolutely no student interaction beyond looking at work that students submit. So their papers, their PowerPoint presentations, etc. In the lead evaluator role, I am primarily responsible for the performance of the course. So I guide other faculty members to ensure that they are evaluating accurately and fairly. One of the benefits of the disaggregated model is that we're able to eliminate a lot of bias that may come from classroom interaction. But you also want to maintain a standard in making sure that evaluators are evaluating the same way and that that's accurate. So I keep track of data, making sure that things kind of look the way they're supposed to look. If we start to see really high pass rates or really high fail rates, those are things that I'm going to investigate because they could be student facing. The increased use of AI is something that we've noticed a lot that's actually negatively impacting student results. And then sometimes something in the world happens and we get a little bit uncalibrated. We go in and we make sure that the evaluators are all on the same page and grading accurately and fairly. I've been a faculty member for almost 12 years. I started off in a student-facing role where I advised students through master's degree programs. And then as part of my military spouse journey, when we got to Japan, a student-facing role became really challenging with the time zone differences, coordination, and just being tired all the time. I wasn't able to support students the way I wanted to, and so made the decision to do a lateral pivot internally and move into the evaluation faculty space.
Awesome. I mean, it's good to see how like the flexibility worked. I mean, I think we were talking to some other spouses, and it just seems like the thread that's common between all of you who are doing well is that you kept a flexible mindset and you were open to opportunities and you weren't so inflexible and thinking, this is what I have to do, this is the path I have to take, and I won't veer away. So I think that's really cool. So I just want to reiterate, because it is really important. I mean, is it fair to say that you found an organization that allowed remote work? And then you're able to maintain your career by looking for multiple opportunities within the same organization that would allow you to continue on and in some cases grow.
Absolutely. I was fortunate that I was in a remote first organization when I met and started dating my now husband, um, and was able to candidly probably wouldn't have dated him otherwise. It was like wasn't gonna at that point in my career sacrifice the things that I had done because I met a really handsome and charming Marine. Turned out it worked out well. Um, in that organization, because it's remote first, there have been opportunities to pivot. I think the point you made about being flexible, my path is not the straight trajectory that I had hoped it would be in some regard. At the same time, I have had the flexibility to pivot. And when I made those pivots, particularly this last one into evaluation, I was very clear about what I wanted to do next. You know, I'm making this pivot because, yes, there have been some changes, but I also think this is a space where I can excel. And these are the steps I want to take. And so communicating that, I think, directly impacted my ability to earn 2 promotions in 3 years in that new space, but also working within an organization that didn't frown upon that pivot and was like, yeah, do it. There's a space, go take it. Here you go. Was really impactful in allowing me to do those things and continue my development.
No, that's awesome. And I mean, the next question I'm gonna ask you is what tip you have for military spouses. But first, I'm gonna let you stew on that a little bit while I ask you something else that you kind of perked in me, which is, in past conversations that we had, you were talking about even though you have a position that's fully remote with an organization, that doesn't mean that with every PCS, that position will remain remote and that you're going to keep that position within the organization because you were saying that there are some states or, moving overseas might impact that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can actually kind of probably answer both questions at the same time.
Perfect.
I
Great.
think it's really important within a remote organization. It's hard to develop relationships sometimes because you're remote. My company particularly does not do a lot of in-person interaction. You will onboard remotely. You may or may not have the opportunity to participate in events, in physical events with other people. And so when and if those opportunities occur, develop those relationships and maintain those relationships. The thing that we had discussed previously about just because you're remote first doesn't mean it gets to pack up in your backpack and go with you everywhere. Many organizations, if you move to like California or Washington State, will be unhappy about that move because of the employment laws in those states. So you may or may not need a waiver. They may or may not grant that waiver. Overseas rules are different. Some countries you can work for a company back in the States, some countries you cannot. Some organizations are structured and will allow, can facilitate that, can help you facilitate that. Others are not. And so while remote first has worked really well for me, and my organization is structured in a way that is remarkably military spouse friendly, that's not going to necessarily be the case across the board. And what I found is at any point, at any move, actually, my organization could have said, that's not where we hired you, and we don't want you moving impact something for us. So they are not required to keep me on. But because of the relationships I had developed in my organization and the reputation I had built in my organization with my performance, I never had any difficulty facilitating those things for myself.
So it sounds like you have to perform, and you also have to continue networking, and you have to move away from making the assumption that just because a position is remote and you're moving does not necessarily mean you're going to get to keep the position even within the same organization. Those are really, really good tips. So, just in what you were just saying, it sounds like mentors and sponsors have played a really large role in your career, and a lot of spouses are always asking us, how do you even connect with a good mentor and how do you even identify a sponsor? And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, you don't identify a sponsor. They kind of identify you. Sponsors are kind of stealthy, right? Like you don't necessarily know when they've, recommended you for something. You may find out sometimes, but you don't always know. But like how do you find them? How did you find your mentors and sponsors and how did you first connect with them?
I was very fortunate in the mentor space where I had a couple of colleagues who just really saw something in me and liked me and said, okay, like, here you go. And it was not formal mentorship. In fact, at the time, I would not have considered it mentorship. I was like, oh, they're just being really nice and friendly. But they were the people that when I had something to say or had a question or an idea, and maybe we were in a meeting and I was on chat and I'm like, is it appropriate if I just go ahead and do this? They were really the cheerleaders and the advocates who empowered me to be like, you are smart, you are capable, you are here because you earned this space. Speak your piece. And they continue to do that both in personal and professional spaces, which was a gift. I will say, as a different perspective on sponsors, I 100% believe you can identify your sponsors and ask them for help. That is what I have done and continue to do with my leadership is say, hey, I want to do this, this, and this. How do I do this? Who do I talk to? How do I find these things? Because if you don't ask and if you don't vocalize those things they don't know, yes, it is fantastic when somebody is talking about you in a great way in rooms you don't know about, but you can impact that sponsor by developing relationships, by asking, by saying, hey, I'm doing this. Obviously, like you mentioned before, you have to perform. You can't just say, I'm awesome. You may be, but they need you to be a specific kind of awesome. And they're asking you to be a specific kind of awesome. So in my
putting the reputation on the table, on the line,
yes,
right?
absolutely. And so they have to have something that they can do for that, but you are absolutely within the scope of your role entitled to ask for that. And if they say no, that's fine. You can find another way. And it may not work out that way, but I would highly encourage people to identify those people who become key players. That was really pivotal in my transition internally, where someone who was a colleague of mine when I first started promoted and went to a different department. And then when I was ready to move to that department, I, teamed her. I was like, hey, how do I do this? What do I need to do? Who do I need to talk to? And she's like, well, you just need to talk to me. And I was like, oh, okay. And by doing that, you can take some of the great and powerful odds behind the curtain away from that sponsor relationship. And I think you can do that in your larger network as well. As someone who's about to transition physically across the country, and looking for some different opportunities because I've earned an additional academic credential, that's what I'm going to start doing. Heck, I did it before we started this conversation with you. Like, who do I need to know? What do I need to do? These are the spaces I'm looking to enter. And you're not necessarily going to be my sponsor in any way, shape, or form, but you can absolutely advocate for me. You can just say my name. And I think sometimes we undervalue that advocate space where your name is getting dropped in certain places, not as a way to directly impact anything, but to raise awareness and make that connection for the network to go to the next stage.
No, I think that's exactly right. And for me, it was a lot easier for me to offer my help because I already knew you. I've already worked with you. You did a session for our summit, and so I could see you in person. Like, I know what you're capable of in person. So just for you guys out there who weren't privy to our conversation before we jumped on, which is no one unless you're here. I mean, so what I was saying was, what do you want to do? Like, who do you want to meet? Like, tell me what kind of pivot you want. And I was just racking my brain. And we together came up with just a couple people I need to connect her with. And then, so it sounds like for you, the mentorship component at least worked organically, where there
Yeah.
were people you worked for or with, and then that came about organically. But I like what you said about the sponsors though, because I think that you're absolutely right. When it comes to sponsorship, something that you and I can both 100% agree on is that you have to kind of put it out in the universe that I'm open to these opportunities. Because if people don't know that you're open to certain opportunities and certain growth opportunities, they're not going to be thinking of you at all because they
Yep.
meet so many people. So I think you're absolutely right there. What I love about what you said though is that you're so much more proactive than I am. And I think you're right. We need to do better about advocating for ourselves. But we also need to understand when someone says no.
Yes.
Something you also said. And maybe that's why I've never advocated, because I'm always afraid of rejection. Like, don't say no, please don't reject me. But no, those are some really good tips. So, I mean, it sounds like it worked out well for you, but you've also had to make some compromises, because I know that, was it when you went to Okinawa, you had to take a job that was like maybe lateral or maybe like not the career progression you'd hope for, because you were making an overseas move. I mean, how's that going to change once your spouse retires? What are you looking forward to the most within the professional frame in retirement?
Um, I think to your point, yeah, there were definitely some lateral moves. I think even kind of before that, like my husband and I have been married almost 7 years, and there were some opportunities for promotion like right when we got married. But that was going to be my first PCS. We were moving from Oklahoma to California, and I had no idea what to expect from like literally any of it. And so I made a decision to not take some opportunities because I did not think that taking on additional work while I was taking on a major life transition felt like the best way to approach life at that time. I still stand by that. It did definitely slow processes down for me. And then because we were in California, there were certain opportunities that I couldn't take because though my organization is primarily remote first, there are opportunities in various offices. And there were some of those that would have been an excellent fit, but we were not willing to geobatch because we were newlyweds. That sounded
Yeah.
terrible. And those are opportunities that, you don't know. It's kind of like, well, what's the cost of a missed opportunity? Looking back at that, I don't care because I had some fabulous experiences and got to do some amazing other things. And then I did make a lateral move because promotion within the space I was in was not going to be aligned with living a military life in a foreign country. My need to be available during regular business hours, and those types of things. And I made those decisions also based on the fact that like I wanted to volunteer. There were some organizations I wanted to get involved with, and making certain pivots allowed me that work-life balance where the promotion wasn't as important as the opportunity to be a little bit more full and a little bit more present in some of those spaces. To being excited about being in a place is the idea that I can look for jobs that are hybrid or in person. I can take some of this education and experience and say, okay, what else can I do with it? Because I have, correctly or incorrectly, felt a little bit like, do not look this gift horse in the mouth, as you mentioned earlier, kind of the unicorn. Like I've gotten to take this job to foreign countries. I've had no gap. And that's incredible. And didn't want to do anything to jeopardize that situation, where now I can say, okay, I've done these things and I may continue in this space. There may not be anything better or more fulfilling to me, but there may be. That idea that you can look in a geographic space and be committed to it. You can also like really develop relationships in person. I think that's one of the downfalls of remote work is, man, we've been in San Diego for a year and a half. And because of our circumstances and because of my work and because of my school, I have not connected to a community here. And it has been heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Being able to do that and find the spaces and know that we're going to a place where some of that stuff exists very organically for me, where I can get back to the community component.
We can't wait to meet you in person.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. And Kaylin's they've already bought like sporting tickets. She's ready.
I am ready. And I'm so excited because it's my first move ever in my life as an adult. Like I went to college and did not know, I knew one person at my university when I went to college. I left college, and after I graduated from college, I moved to a city where I knew one person who was not interested in helping me particularly. So this is the first time in my life I'm moving someplace where like I know people in the area and already have a network, and people are like, let's do lunch. I'm
You're like, yes, let's do lunch.
I like all of them, all the lunches.
Yeah, NMSN, we love doing all the lunches. So and all happy hours. So we are looking forward to seeing you and welcoming you in person. So I think that a lot of military spouses are going to kind of see their story in you, because this totally resonates about like, that little feeling that, yeah, you have to make compromises and, and then you kind of waited, because you're like, I'm not saying that geobatching is bad. I'm not just saying geobatching doesn't work for me because I'm a newlywed. And I think that's great. And I think my biggest takeaway from this is be confident, be comfortable, advocate for yourself, and what, you do you. Like whatever decision you make is got to be the best one for your family. And I'm really excited to see what the future brings for you because we get to be part of it. So welcome to the area. So I mean, if you want to read more about Kaelin, I hope you go and read her whole highlight on our website, and we will link it down below. But thank you so much. And I hope that you guys will tell your stories, like apply for a highlight and you might get chosen. We would love to hear about your professional military spouse journey. So thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you next week. Bye, guys.
Thank you.